Hello, everyone. So the Griffin chip fell yesterday, and his new cap hit this year drops down to $7.9 million, which is helpful. And last I checked, I don't know if this is counting the incoming cap hits of the Anthony Barr and the Shamar Stephen coming in, but last I saw it was around 7.3 ish million, the cap as a whole. So what can they do with that? 7.3 ish? Not really much if you plan on paying incoming rookies, especially if that's not counting, you know, Barr and Steffen, which then you got problems. And so that being said, I think Minnesota has another cap relief move or two up their sleeve, which instantly people are going to point to Waynes and Rudolph. I think Linval is also a possible restructure, given the fact that he has a $10.7 million cap hit next year. And he's getting a little older, but they like Linval. So I'm thinking, maybe, maybe. And the other thing is, if you are to trade Waynes, or the real cap saving move with Rudolph is you cut Kyle Rudolph and you get that 7.6 right back to you. So the question then becomes, is there any form of combination of players where if you got rid of one, there are people to go after? And I think there could be a few. On the offensive line, I wrote down just a few names. I'm not going in depth on the names. It's mostly just pointing out some guys who could spark some kind of interest. You got TJ Lang and Josh Sitton, both coming off of injuries, but both very good in pass protection over the course of their careers. And obviously they played together in Green Bay. Maybe they just shift on over. No. You also got Andy Levitri, who spent time in that Kyle Shanahan outside zone system, which is very similar to the Kubiak system. He plays left guard. Currently, I think if they were to play a game like this week, the offensive line, you're probably looking at Reef, Aviant Collins, Elfline, Isadora, then O'Neal at right tackle. That's probably the odds. So they need guards, and Andy Levitri comes in right at left guard. And you got Quentin Spain, who I don't think is a great fit. He comes from Tennessee, but he's a lot more talented than what they have had over there in the past few years. So based on that alone, it should go better, but he's not really what I would call a real scheme fit for this, because he is kind of a bigger, more hulking guy. Maybe fits the whole Zimmer mantra more than the Kubiak ways. You got Stefan Wisniewski, who he's been kind of an average guard / center type for the entirety of his career. So if you also have Nick Easton kind of in the same category. Excuse me. So if you miss out on one, you can probably shift to the other one if they're still interested in that, because I think right now the backup center, I'm pretty sure it's probably Edison. I think they kept him throughout the practice squad throughout the whole year. I'm sorry if I'm wrong on that. But even if they end up with a not starting spot, they could use a backup center with Brett Jones being a free agent as of right now. And I also wrote down Ryan Schrader's name. He was a right tackle for the Falcons. He was just cut. And he's 30 years old, once again coming from had his best years with Kyle Shanahan down when he was in Atlanta, in that outside zone running scheme, once again, very, very similar to that of Gary Kubiak's. And there was some rumors that they were interested in Jawan James, but the price range was obviously way, way too high. But I saw that right before free agency really started, like a day or two before. There were some rumors of that gaining steam. So, and there were some rumors of, Reef the guard, pretty much. And if that's the idea, that means O'Neal is probably their guy for left tackle. So what do you have to do? find a right tackle. Schrader is that guy at right tackle, and then all the movement starts right after. Then you shift Reef to left guard, take O'Neal from right, move him to left, and then if you're saying those are your starters, then all of a sudden you only have right guard to deal with. So it's a thought. Don't know what you guys think about that thought. I'm not for all that movement on the line, but I'd like to know what you guys think there. And then I have some kicker names down as well, because Gostkowski, Matt Bryant, and Sebastian Janikowski, along with Dan Bailey, are all available right now. I think it's most likely we end up with Bailey again, but I think Bryant and Gostkowski should really interest them if they are able to clear cap space, because once again, I just think those guys are better at kicking the ball than Dan Bailey is at this point in his career. And there's also receivers I have here, and mostly as third receivers. Obviously, Thielen and Diggs are really good, and there really isn't a third one. Treadwell, we've been waiting for this thing to happen, and it just hasn't happened. He's probably gone. He's not really that detrimental to the team. But I have Randall Cobb down here, even though he's more of a pure slot guy, and they're probably looking for more of an outside guy since Thielen's had so much success in the slot. But there's also Pierre Garçon, who back in the day with Kirk Cousins in Washington, he was one of his go-to guys. So they already got the chemistry down. They don't have to work on anything really. You just bring him in. He's your third receiver. And as a number one or number two, maybe you don't like it, but as a three, he's fine. Even though he's like 87 years old at this point. You also got Michael Crabtree, another possession guy who wins on the outside. Terrence Williams from Dallas. He is probably more dynamic than Crabtree and Garçon, and he's always been praised by his run blocking ability, and he's a lot more explosive than Treadwell, so you kind of don't lose that run blocking that you get with Treadwell. There's also Chris Hogan from New England, Jordy Nelson maybe, just cut by the Raiders. You also got Jermaine Kearse from, most recently the Jets, but mainly the Seattle Seahawks, and he's more of a possession guy that wins on the outside again. And obviously, they could always go after Aldrick Robinson again. Now, in the event that it was Kyle Rudolph getting cut, I know that causes a hole at tight end. So I did write down some tight end names, even though I've been kind of critical of Rudolph. I'm not that big into him. To me, he just seems like he's not dynamic enough. And he's not that great at run blocking. So it's like, why are you making all this money? That's how I think of it. I know there's reasons why people like Rudolph, but I've never gone to that. So the idea of cutting Rudolph for $7.6 million is kind of enticing to me. So that's why I have tight ends down here. There's not much to do with tight ends in free agency. Like, you have Tyler Eifert, who's a gamble, but he's really dynamic when he's available and healthy. Jared Cook, once again, a really good receiving tight end. And Austin Seferian-Jenkins, another really athletic receiving tight end. And the reason why I think we might be able to go for one of these more athletic guys who don't block as well, because we do have David Morgan. Right now we have pretty much a big contested catch guy in Kyle Rudolph. And I think the game has shifted to how tight ends are used since we drafted Kyle. And Kyle was drafted in 2011 when you ran a 4.8 as a tight end, and that was considered, he's pretty quick as a tight end. That's no longer quick. And especially like a few surgeries later, he's no longer running 4.8s. And this is a really good tight end draft class. You got some tight ends here. You could even potentially talk about bringing Max Williams back into Minnesota. I know some people might like that idea, as he's 25 and at least he's still running 4.8s. But I think you could possibly upgrade at tight end from Kyle Rudolph just because of the past injuries that have happened and how the game has shifted since he came into the league. Because now we kind of look for more of these athletic guys who can stretch the field and kind of be this mismatched kind of guy that you can move around everywhere. That's never been Kyle's game. So, yeah. And one thing to point out with Everson Griffen's contract that I saw, um, I think it was Ben Gessling, and on the Twitter machine, and he said he had an option to void his contract. The void the last 3 years of his contract if he were to get 6 or more sacks next year. And I thought that was interesting just because I was like, that feels a little low for Griff because obviously he wasn't in his right state of mind last year. Still got 5.5. So I thought 6 was a little low. And once again, I'm just wondering if all of the things they've done with Barr mainly, and a lot of those were sack incentives, I think, it turns out. I've seen some people say this. And if you're saying this is only 6 sacks for him, maybe Barr takes some reps, well, a lot more reps at rushing the passer this year. Maybe we finally get it. But I thought that should be a good thing to point out at the end here. But I do think there are guys who we could actually spend the money on if we were to restructure or get rid of some guys still. And yeah, I would like to know what you guys think down below. If there was a name I didn't mention that you would like to have mentioned, all that good stuff. Comment section. Anyway, until next time, I bid y'all adieu.